I work at a big company, you know. I can work enough for both of us, so no worries. Kenneth had said that during our engagement, but as soon as we got married, he changed his tune. He and Matthew would hurl insults at me daily. On top of that, he managed the money himself and skimped on living expenses. He'd complain non-stop, even though he let me do the cooking. Fed up, I declared divorce to Kenneth and left the house. Later, I bumped into Matthew by chance. "Hey. Heard you're getting TANF now." I was surprised. "Huh? You must be mistaking me for someone else. Don't put on airs." Matthew smirked. "Listen, we're estranged, okay? Don't come crying to me about having no money. I won't lend you a dime. Remember that." As I opened my mouth to retort, he had already disappeared into the crowd. I lowered my head, feeling the stares of passers-by, my shoulders shaking. I couldn't suppress my laughter. Poor thing, he knows nothing. I can't wait to see his reaction when he learns the truth. I'm Hannah, a 50-year-old housewife. I married Kenneth 5 years ago. When we met, Kenneth was the picture of a fine young man. We met at a gathering of acquaintances, and I found him fun to talk to and very friendly. As we parted, he said, "I want to meet just the two of us next time." Feeling sad about saying goodbye, I agreed. When we started dating, he mentioned having a son named Matthew with his ex-wife, who was then in 5th grade. We dined together a few times. He was a bright and pleasant boy, just like his dad. A year later, on the night Kenneth proposed, I took a leap and opened up. "You know I live with my parents while working part-time, right? The company I joined right after graduating was a black company, and it wrecked my health. Is that so? It was tough to quit too. I think long hours will be difficult for me in the future." Then Kenneth smiled kindly. "Don't worry about it. Just stay at home. Look, I work at a big company. I can work enough for both of us." Relieved by his words, I accepted his proposal. I was glad to have met a good man and believed we were starting a happy married life. I never imagined tasting despair in less than half a year. As we got used to living as a family of 3, Kenneth and Matthew's attitudes changed drastically. They started ridiculing my actions and words in a light tone. "Mom, are you bedridden again? Where's my sandwich?" Matthew frowned discontentedly as he came to the bedroom before school. I had participated in weeding at a nearby park yesterday and fell ill. It was an unusually hot day, and I had felt unwell since the day before. I had asked Kenneth, but he refused with an irritated look. Being a housewife must be nice. Slacking off all year. I need my days off, you know. Let me rest. Okay. Unable to get up the next morning due to pushing myself, I apologized to Matthew. "Sorry, Matthew. I couldn't prepare your sandwich, so buy one at the grocery store." Handing him money, Matthew grumbled. "Mom, can't you at least make a sandwich? You always take shortcuts with frozen food or leftovers. You're failing as a mom if you can't even cook." His words stung. "Don't blame Mom, Matthew." Kenneth joined in with a half smile as he passed the hallway. "Since you skimped on the sandwich, tonight's dinner must be lavish." "Oh, is that so? Then I'll look forward to it. Being a housewife, you should have plenty of time for dinner, right? You're not sleeping until the evening, are you? Make sure to clean thoroughly without slacking." The two of them nonchalantly laughed at my poor condition, dropping their insensitive lines before leaving. As if I could prepare a lavish meal. Lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, I let out a heavy sigh. Because Kenneth is an extreme penny pincher. Despite being a section chief at a big company and earning a high salary, the living expenses he gave me were ridiculously low. It's my salary, so why should my wife manage it? After we married, Kenneth insisted on this and I, not opposing, meekly followed. I believed it didn't matter who managed the finances as long as it was done properly. Then Kenneth got carried away and started spending money as he pleased. It's necessary for work. Drinking expenses are business expenses. It's essential. Using such reasons as an excuse, he would buy expensive clothes and watches for himself, but make a sour face even when I bought cheap snacks. Since he insisted that a housewife doesn't need an allowance, I had to report to Kenneth and get permission to spend money whenever I went to the hair salon or bought clothes. One pair of jeans is enough, isn't it? You're buying more? I want a warm pair for winter. Fine. But buy them at a cheap store. I also want to get a haircut. Can I go to the hair salon once every 2 months to maintain my hairstyle? Huh? What's the point of you trying to be fashionable? If you keep your hair long, you only need to cut it once every 6 months. I won't allow haircuts. That's why I'm only allowed to buy cheap makeup from drugstores. I want to switch to something better because it's rough on my skin. But he won't listen. Moreover, the living expenses he gives are a third of the average. With this budget, our nutrition will be unbalanced. I lamented, to which Kenneth responded with a raised chin. On that TV saving show, they managed to live on this amount. They had a farmer-in-law providing vegetables and bread. It's impossible with these high prices. That's your job to manage. I was distressed by the thriftiness in living expenses, but what I couldn't stomach was about the wreath for Dad's funeral. When Dad, who had been ill, passed away and it was time to send a wreath, Kenneth visibly grimaced. We don't need to send a wreath for the funeral, right? Anyone attending the funeral, other than the chief mourner, should send one. Really? Then use your savings. It's none of my business. He said this to me as I prepared for the funeral with tears in my eyes. His utter lack of concern infuriated me. I never planned to ask you for it, so don't worry. Good. But do Matthew and I really have to go? Our long weekend will be ruined, and I hate that. Right, Dad? I had plans to play a new game. Although they grumbled, I never doubted they would come. However, Kenneth and Matthew arrived late, barely greeted my mom and relatives, and left swiftly. My exhausted mom didn't seem to have the energy to blame them, but my relatives were furious. What's the meaning of this, Kenneth? Your wife's father died, and you're too cold. Matthew, you've received so many gifts and allowances from Hannah's dad. While I apologized to my relatives, I felt my love for the two of them rapidly cooling. Kenneth, always in stylish suits with a refreshing aura, and Matthew, attending a prestigious university. Well regarded as a handsome father and son in the neighborhood, they only hurled insults at me at home. They wouldn't come straight home after work or school, wandering around, and returning with lipstick and perfume scents. Despite doing as they pleased, they treated me like a housekeeper, demanding lavish meals with a meager food budget. Lately, when I served dishes with chicken or pork, both would glare at me with disdain and hurl insults. Don't you want to serve your husband good food after he returns from work? If I get sick from eating this poor food, how will you take responsibility? Are you even a mom? I can make delicious meals even with chicken or pork. Besides, disliking vegetables and fish. You'll get sick with such a picky diet. I'm saying I'd eat if it were high quality. Don't complain when you can't satisfy us. I don't need advice from someone as frail as you. They used to eat while complaining, but lately they just leave the food untouched. Yet, if I don't cook, are you slacking off even though you're a wife? They would yell. I eat the leftovers for breakfast or lunch the next day, but tears well up, wondering for whom I'm cooking. As for their meals, they subsist on store-bought sandwiches, instant ramen, and snack foods. Eventually, Kenneth was diagnosed as pre-diabetic in a company health check, and Matthew started gaining weight. It was an inevitable outcome. Then they lashed out at me. What kind of wife makes her husband and child sick? We don't need a useless person like you. We're getting a divorce. Then I'll leave. They were surprised when I agreed easily. Are you sure? You're unemployed. You've been living off me. How will you survive now? Don't worry about me. I'll send the divorce papers for you to sign later. Please leave my stuff until the movers come to pick it up. Nobody's going to take your stuff. Kenneth sneered. You'll definitely regret divorcing a high-earning, handsome guy like me. A kind husband who lets you be a housewife with 3 meals and naps. There's no one else like that in the world, right? That's right. You've been living in luxury on Dad's money till now. You'll struggle from here on. While I packed clothes into my suitcase, Kenneth and Matthew kept talking endlessly behind me. Honestly, I envy Kenneth's ability to overestimate himself so much. When we were dating, I saw this part of him as confident and shining. You'll just go back to your parents, right? Say hi to your pensioner mom for me. You too will be heading straight to poverty. Matthew, I bet they'll end up on TANF soon. Matthew laughed at Kenneth's prediction. They already reek of poverty, but with Grandma, it'll be the ultimate. The funeral the other day was nothing special. It smelled like poverty. I thought so too. Like a poor family's funeral. I want a lavish one, Matthew. Got it, Dad. But for Dad, who works at a big company, and me, attending a prestigious university, poverty is a different world. Their endless comments infuriated me, but realizing it was pointless to respond, I let it all go. After returning home and explaining everything to Mom, she lowered her voice. At the funeral, seeing Kenneth and Matthew, I felt something wasn't right. But I thought it's not good to interfere too much in my daughter's household and kept silent. I was too preoccupied with Dad's care. I'm sorry for barging in like this. It's okay. I've been lonely without you. Why don't you stay here? Thanks, but once I get my job on track, I plan to move to an apartment. Mom's concern was comforting, but living with her might make me too dependent. Living nearby and visiting occasionally would be the right balance. Yes, Kenneth and Matthew mocked me as unemployed, but in fact, I've been working from home. It all started with the budget recipes I posted on my blog. After receiving many positive comments, I boldly launched a cooking site and shared my recipes, which quickly gained readers and internet fame. Soon after, an editor from a major publisher approached me, and now, I'm gradually preparing to publish a cookbook. Thanks to this, I had no time to dwell on the divorce, and days flew by. One day, my phone rang insistently. I paused stirring the ingredients in the pan and answered the phone. Hello? Hey, what's this about a deposit for the divorce trial? I sighed, knowing it was about that. You and Matthew hurled endless abuse at me. Oh, I thought, never mind. Relief in his voice, Kenneth continued. I didn't cheat or anything, you know. What, did you record me and Matthew? Your memory alone won't cut it. I've noted everything in my diary. Try and claim it if you can. Really, poor people and their obsession with money, you reek of frugality. If you think you can get a deposit for the divorce trial, go ahead. After his outburst, Kenneth hung up. I finished cooking and visited a detective agency, requesting an investigation into Kenneth's background. Soon, his affair with a subordinate was uncovered. The day after sending the two-shot photos and investigation report to his company, Kenneth contacted me again. "You spreading this at work is low." The angry manager reported it to the higher-ups, and now I'm fired. "Oh, she was the manager's daughter, wasn't she? It's your fault for cheating, knowing they're strict about such matters." I continued, laughing. "But you shouldn't have any trouble, right? With all the saving you did, you must have plenty of savings. Aren't you and Matthew living luxuriously?" Matthew moved into a dormitory this spring because commuting was tough. Damn, I have prepaid dorm fees and apartment loans. My savings? Drained by that woman. She was two-timing me with a younger guy. Sounds tough for you. But it's none of my concern. Oh, and about the divorce trial deposit, I'll also take half the value of the apartment for distribution of property. When the invoice arrives, please transfer the full amount to my account." Kenneth was yelling on the other side, but I hung up without a care. One day, while returning from shopping in town, I bumped into Matthew. Dressed in his usual flashy fashion, with piercings all over his face and his attention-grabbing hairstyle, he was easy to spot from a distance. Seeing me, Matthew raised his hand in greeting. "Hey, heard you're getting TANF." I looked puzzled. "Huh? Who are you mistaking me for? Don't put on airs," Matthew said, smirking. "It's obvious where an unemployed old lady like you would end up. If you had just obediently followed me and Dad, you'd still be living a comfortable life. It's pathetic, really." Angry, I couldn't help but retort. Receiving TANF is a citizen's right. Any one of us could need it someday due to illness or an accident. It's wrong to look down on that. Yeah, so you're saying you're receiving it too?" Matthew said, dismissing me with a smirk and pointing his finger at me. "Listen, you and I are estranged. Don't come crying to me for money. Remember that." As I opened my mouth to reply, he turned his back and disappeared into the crowd. I lowered my head, conscious of the stares of passers-by, shaking my shoulders. I couldn't help but laugh, it was just too ridiculous. Poor thing, he knows nothing. I can't wait to see his reaction when he finds out the truth. A few days later, I woke up and checked my phone to find an unbelievable number of missed calls from Matthew. Reluctantly, I called back, and Matthew shouted at me furiously. "You deceived me, old woman." "What are you talking about?" "I heard from a cousin. You got 3 high-rise apartments from Grandpa's inheritance and are living a carefree life. Hiding that and getting a divorce is cowardly. That's my personal asset. Why should I have to tell you or Kenneth? It's joint property. You should have done a distribution of property with Dad during the divorce. Unfortunately, it became mine after the divorce procedures. So I can't give it to Kenneth. Officially, I knew from Dad's will that it would be mine, but I delayed the procedures until after the divorce because I didn't want to share it with Kenneth." Then Matthew shouted in frustration. "A rich woman like you getting TANF? I'll report you to the authorities right now. Feel free. It's not me, but Kenneth who's receiving it." Matthew fell silent. "What? I told you last time, it's not me," I explained as if speaking to a child. "Honestly, even without the inheritance, I can live well. I have income from the cooking site and book sales I started in secret. But Kenneth, after spending all his money on his affair, had lots of payments piling up and was borrowing heavily. When his affair was discovered and he was fired, his income stopped." "Are you listening? Dad's on TANF? No way!" I pulled the phone away from my ear as Matthew screamed. Waiting for him to calm down, I continued. "You really didn't know anything. He's too proud to tell his son. According to relatives he begged money from, he's behind on his apartment rent, facing eviction, and now stays at home all day in an old apartment. If you're worried, why don't you contact him? There was silence on the other side for a while. Then, Matthew said resentfully, "You're cold-hearted. After all Dad did for you, you have no intention of repaying the favor? If you have money, you should give some to Dad." Why should I? Ever since our marriage, it's been nothing but unpleasant memories. I don't feel indebted, I stated coldly. If you're so concerned, why don't you, his son, lend him money? You're working part-time, after all. I don't have savings. The part-time pay goes to, hanging out with friends and stuff. Matthew suddenly became evasive, and I smirked. You've been living quite lavishly for a student. Borrowing money to hang out at clubs is not a good idea. How do you know that? The other day in town, I saw you from across the street. After we parted, you met up with a girl at a club and entered a brand store arm in arm. Also, a club membership card was left at the house. And using my credit card for shopping without my permission is out of the question. Matthew stammered in response. That's unfair. You got high-rise apartments from Grandpa. Why don't I or Dad get a share? This is discrimination. Yeah. The credit card bill will be sent soon. Make sure you pay it. Before I could finish, the call was disconnected. Sighing, I ended the call too. Just when I thought it was all over, a few months later, Kenneth and Matthew showed up at my parents' house without any notice. The doorbell rang incessantly, and when I answered, it was the two of them. Expecting they came to borrow money, I let them into the house to avoid causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Kenneth and Matthew, who until recently were so stylish, now appeared drastically changed, wearing wrinkled shirts and dirty trousers, their eyes lifeless and gaunt. But they still had the energy to be sarcastic. Entering the living room, Kenneth looked around and sneered with a half-smile. Same old house, huh? Why not sell one of those high-rise apartments and rebuild this place? Do something nice for Mom, living miserably on her pension. This is Dad's house, and we like it this way. More importantly, when are you two planning to pay me back? You're past the deadline. Kenneth lifted his chin arrogantly and said, Hannah, I'll forgive you now. So let's remarry. What? You started a cooking site, right? If you manage the household perfectly, I'll even let you work. So come back. Such a generous dad, forgiving the wife who abandoned her husband and child. So, Mom, why not live with Dad again? Living with just two women must be insecure. Stunned, I was speechless. After a moment, intense anger welled up inside me. Don't joke with me. How much more do you plan to ridicule me? Furious, I yelled at the astonished Kenneth and Matthew. After treating me like nothing more than a housewife, hurling abuse, not providing proper living expenses, and then driving me out. Now you want me back just because you found out I inherited high-rise apartments? No way. What? You're going to abandon us? Rich people really are stingy. Knowing we're struggling with money and still demanding payment, you're heartless. You were poor yourself until recently. Don't get cocky. In the midst of the argument, Mom returned from shopping. Kenneth and Matthew immediately started buttering her up. Please lend us some money. We'll probably pay it back. Besides, isn't it unfair that only Hannah gets Grandpa's inheritance? Give me one of the high-rise apartments too. Hi, Grandma. Long time no see. How have you been? Grandma, please persuade Mom to remarry. Dad doesn't want to break up, but Mom is being stubborn. Mom, surprised at first, changed her expression upon hearing their lines. She placed her eco bag on the fridge's floor and let out a deep sigh.
So shameless, both of you.
Eh? What? I'm telling you to have some shame. Startled by Mom's sudden loud voice, Kenneth and Matthew were understandably confused. Mom, usually calm, scolded them sharply. I've heard everything about the divorce from Hannah. I can't believe you have the nerve to show up here. No. Hannah is exaggerating. You have to listen to our side too. That's right, Grandma. Mom is quite the liar. I remember well how you two behaved at my husband's funeral. Mom cut off Matthew's words and continued sternly. Arriving nonchalantly late to the funeral, not greeting me or the relatives, yawning through the service, and leaving before the coffin was sent off. And now you dare ask for his inheritance? Go back to sleep. She drove a taken-aback Kenneth and Matthew to the front door and glared at them one last time. You two are now strangers to us. Don't come here again. If you do, I'll call the police. Mom threw their shoes out the door, forcing them to leave in their socks, and immediately locked the front door. Kenneth, who had been avoiding paying me, was advised by his lawyer that a lawsuit would cost even more. Reluctantly, he finally transferred the money to my account. Even though Kenneth was fired from his job, he couldn't find another one, and the in-laws, hearing about their son's situation from relatives, stepped in to cover his debts. They visited my parents' house and apologized profusely for Kenneth's troubles. Later, Kenneth, having given up on finding a new job, returned to the countryside under the guise of helping with the family's farming. However, the story of our divorce spread through the village, leading to both children and elders pointing and laughing at Kenneth. There's thrifty Uncle Kenneth. Even with a degree from a good university and a job at a big company, what's the use if your wife leaves you for being too arrogant? The reason for his divorce from his first wife was also his reckless spending. He'll never change. Being mocked by the villagers is embarrassing. Remarry me to show them. I kept receiving such persistent messages from Kenneth, so I deleted his contact. His mistress, apparently no longer interested after the money ran out, had long since left him. I found her with a detective's help and made sure she paid the divorce trial's security deposit. I also made Matthew reimburse for the card he used without permission. Though enrolled in a prestigious university and on track to become an elite like his father, Matthew started skipping classes and playing around, leading to failing grades and eventual expulsion. His friends and girlfriends were concerned, but Matthew, in his arrogance, alienated them with his prideful remarks. He then had a major argument with Kenneth, saying, "You're my son, yet you won't help repay the debt." Now, they're estranged. Matthew lives alone in a small apartment, making ends meet with part-time jobs. Gone are the days of buying whatever he wanted and enduring sarcastic remarks despite high earnings. For me, it's a refreshing change. With my cooking site taking off and a book deal finalized, I moved to the top floor of the high-rise apartment inherited from Dad. Mom is still healthy at 73. The high-rise is close to our family home, so it's convenient if anything happens to her. I'm planning a surprise hot spring trip for Mom's upcoming birthday. Though my marriage was a failure, I want to continue having a good relationship with Mom. My name is Kate. I'm a 48-year-old homemaker. In this day and age, some might think being a homemaker is enviable. But I'm not the kind of homemaker who lives in luxury on my husband's earnings. Ben, should I help you wipe down? I'm sorry. Ben, who's in his mid-60s, had a stroke a decade ago when he was still full of energy. Since then, he's been bedridden. All this time, I've been caring for him. We used to worry about not being able to have children when we were younger. But now I see it as a blessing that allows me to devote myself to caregiving. Life is strange, isn't it? Ben's body doesn't move as he wishes, but his mind is clear. Maybe that's why. He always seems to feel sorry towards me. But I wish he wouldn't. I don't find this life too burdensome. Sure, caregiving support services have increased compared to the past, and it's not like I can't take a break at all. But I started caregiving in my 30s, and now I'm in my 40s. I can't deny that my physical strength isn't what it used to be. So, naturally, I wish for some support. From my husband. Could you give me a hand? And then, I'm busy right now. Tom, my husband said. I might understand if he were actually working. But how is lying on the sofa and fiddling with his mobile phone busy? If you're just looking at your phone, help out. It's your dad, after all. I'm supporting by working, aren't I? Let me rest at least on my days off. Saying that, my husband frowned irritably and stood up to leave the room. It's always the same. He doesn't lift a finger. Even if he can't help with caregiving, it would be nice if he at least took care of himself. My husband, hand on the door, turned back and said, "Oh yeah, I have a business trip for the next 3 days. Get everything ready." Again? Can't you at least? I'm busy. You should do that much as a wife. Shouting, my husband left the room. Does preparing himself challenge his pride? We're supposed to support each other as a married couple. How did it come to this? No choice. I'll get some help after the helper comes. I sighed and kept staring at the door through which my husband had left. Is that boy off on a business trip again? The night my husband left for his trip, as I was drinking coffee, Linda showed up. Linda, who can't get by without her cane due to mobility issues, is otherwise sharp. While Ben was sleeping, I took a break and helped Linda sit down by taking her hand and guiding her to a chair. After taking a sip of the freshly brewed coffee and exhaling, Linda said with a hint of sadness, "He's always away on business trips several times a month. I wonder if that's really the case." Well, who knows? Linda and I are probably thinking the same thing. Harboring the same suspicions. Infidelity. That word flickers through my mind. But I deliberately don't voice it. What difference does it make if I find out about my husband's infidelity? He'll surely deny it, and gathering evidence would cost money and effort. But I don't have the luxury to deal with that right now. My affection for my husband is almost non-existent. And naturally, his affection towards me is the same. But having lost my own parents early, my in-laws are as precious to me as my own. I can't abandon them. After all, my husband does contribute financially to the household, so maybe it's better to leave his issues be. After a long life of caregiving, I've given up. It wasn't always like this. My husband used to be kind to me when we were distressed about not being able to have children. He used to be dutiful to his parents. But as soon as the caregiving for his parents began, he changed as if he were a different person. Acting on his own whims, almost as if he was single. He started leaving home frequently, claiming he was on business trips. He grew colder, not just towards his parents, but towards me as well. "You're such an unattractive woman, eating with you ruins my appetite." After being bluntly told that, we started eating separately. Now, my husband eats alone, while I feed Ben and share meals with Linda. "I don't want to sleep in the same room." Since he said that, I've been sleeping on the living room sofa. But the kind and grateful words from my caring in-laws somehow kept me going. Just when I was feeling the distance from my husband, another troubling issue arose. The money my husband was bringing home decreased. Despite discussing various problems, he stubbornly insisted his salary had decreased. But I knew he was lying. I happened to see his pay stub. To my surprise, his salary had actually increased. I wondered if he had received a promotion, but that wasn't the important part. The problem was that he was lying and reducing the money for the household. That's quite a sum for your parents' taxi, fares to the hospital, and hiring helpers. Our living expenses are. What? Managing with the money provided is a homemaker's duty. If you can't do that, you're failing as a homemaker. If you can't even manage that, what value do you have? No matter how much I pleaded, my husband wouldn't listen. Seeing this, my in-laws seemed apologetically again. They even offered their meager pensions to help with the living expenses. Feeling sorry, I struggled to make ends meet with the money my husband gave. As a result, our meals became vegetable-centered and modest. My in-laws claimed to prefer such meals, but my husband would say, "How can I eat such plain food?" And he started dining out every night. Consequently, the money he brought home decreased even more. A vicious cycle that also lessened his time at home. And in proportion, my spirit dwindled away. On that particular day, Ben's condition suddenly worsened. A stroke had recurred. In no time at all, Ben passed away. Initially, I was stunned, but then tears wouldn't stop flowing. Linda and I hugged and cried in front of Ben, who looked as if he were merely sleeping. At that time, my husband was, yet again, on a business trip. When I finally calmed down a bit and called him, "Hello? Who's this?" A woman answered the phone, to my shock. My husband was in the midst of an affair. "Hey, don't just pick up like that." I heard my husband's voice, sounding flustered as he snatched the phone away. Normally, I'd be seething with anger in such a situation. But having just lost Ben, my heart felt numb, and I was surprisingly calm. Without confronting him about the affair, I simply informed him that Ben had passed away. "Oh, really?" His response was disconcertingly brief. Can someone be this indifferent about their own father's death? To me, my husband seemed as alien as a being from another planet. No, that's an insult to aliens. Even in space, I believe there's some sense of parent-child bond. Throughout the funeral, my husband maintained a detached demeanor, merely going through the motions of being the chief mourner. Relatives consoled the grieving Linda. Meanwhile, the actual son seemed to spend most of the time fiddling with his mobile phone and yawning. Everyone looked at my husband with disdain. Because of him, Ben's funeral, whom I dearly loved, became a dismal affair. A month passed since then. Between dealing with the aftermath of Ben's death and caring for Linda's mental health, time flew by. My husband was in an exceptionally good mood today. Because today was the day Ben's will was to be disclosed. Ben had prepared a notarized will, which doesn't require court verification. It was kept in the lawyer's office. Today, Linda was to bring it from the office and open it. Normally, one would assume the inheritors to be Linda, the wife, and my husband, the only son. I wondered if there was really a need for a will. Could there be a secret child? With bated breath, I watched the proceedings, reminding myself that as a DIL, I had no rights to the inheritance. The lawyer, called in for this day, along with relatives of both in-laws, were present as witnesses. As everyone watched, the lawyer opened and read the will. That was, Linda was to inherit the house and land, and half of all other assets. That was expected. But what followed was shocking. The remaining half wasn't left to my husband, the son. What? Kate and I are to inherit the remaining half equally? My husband stood up, shouting in disbelief. Indeed. The will unexpectedly left part of the inheritance to me. Stunned, I watched as my husband pointed at me and yelled furiously. Why does my wife have to take the inheritance? I'm the real son. Everything, apart from Mom's share, should obviously come to me. But the will states, I don't care. It's invalid. Invalid. My husband screamed at the lawyer. I was speechless, shocked by the sudden turn of events. But what my husband said next left me completely astounded. I was the one who mostly took care of Dad. She didn't do much. What? What is this man saying? I already knew he was a liar, but this lie was too much. He took care of Ben mostly? Who could say such a thing? I couldn't stay silent anymore and was about to speak when. What are you talking about? Have some shame, you foolish son. The shout didn't come from me. Unexpectedly, it was Linda. A dramatic soundtrack seemed to play as Linda's face filled the screen. Or at least, that's how it felt. Then, a close-up of my husband's shocked face. Silence fell over the room. Linda, usually so quiet and never raising her voice, had taken us all by surprise. My husband, stunned by her uncharacteristic fierceness, was speechless. In the midst of this, Linda continued. Mostly took care of Ben, you say? Which mouth of yours is saying that? You do nothing but play with your phone or watch TV every day. You don't even eat at home. You barely contribute any money to the household. And to top it off, you lie about business trips to cheat. You really don't deserve a cent of the inheritance. What? Is that true? Reacting to Linda's words were Ben's brothers. Strong-looking men due to their construction business. Confronted by these imposing figures, my husband seemed even smaller. Eh? What do you mean? Mom, I might not have been home much, but the affair accusation is just baseless. Don't make random claims without any evidence. My husband was stuttering and sweating in panic. Without missing a beat, Linda produced a large envelope. Where did that come from? Did she have it hidden? I hadn't noticed it at all. Do you know what this is? It's filled with evidence of your affairs. I didn't think Kate, who worked so hard taking care of Ben, would have the means. So Ben and I hired a detective. Be prepared. With that, Linda scattered the contents of the envelope. After my husband's scream, the relatives reacted. What is this? Ugh, that's disgusting. Really, my eyes feel dirty now. The reaction from the relatives was one of disappointment. The contents were numerous embarrassing photos of my husband and his mistress. What are they even doing outdoors? I didn't know my husband had such hobbies. Never thought I'd discover such hidden sides of my husband after 20 years of marriage. Like the relatives, I was appalled. Shame on you. Doing such disgraceful things. Claiming you took care of Ben, saying Kate did nothing. Insisting the inheritance is all yours, how dare you say such things? You shameless, unfilial son. Apologize to Kate. It's not like that, this is wrong. It's not wrong, you foolish son. Linda, calm down, please. You'll burst a blood vessel. It's too early to follow Ben. Perhaps it was Linda's towering rage that allowed me, the one who should be most upset, to remain calm.
Linda, please calm down. Breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale.
That foolish son. After some deep breathing, Linda calmed down a bit. But her anger was far from subsiding. Seeing her like this made me start to laugh. Kate? Surprised, Linda looked at me as I suddenly burst into laughter. I smiled at Linda and then hugged her. Thank you so much, Linda. Kate? For getting angry on my behalf, for conducting such an investigation for me. I really appreciate it. Of course. You are my precious daughter, after all. Daughter. I never realized how happy being called that could make me. Since Ben's passing, I've become quite teary, and once again, tears welled up. But I can't spend all my time crying. After stepping away from Linda, I wiped away my tears roughly and looked at my husband. You. What? Let's get a divorce. Fine by me, I'll gladly do it. I desperately suppressed another wave of laughter and then confirmed with my husband. So, about the will, about the inheritance? All right, I accept Dad's will. I looked at the lawyer, who slowly nodded. The lawyer was designated as the executor of the will. I was sure he would handle the following procedures smoothly. Taking a moment to breathe, I then moved on to another matter. Shall we begin? My statement was met with nods from Linda and the attending relatives. My husband was the only one who didn't understand. What more is there to discuss? To my clueless husband, I said with a smile. It's obvious, isn't it? The compensation claim for your affair. What? Why did he think it would all end here? With evidence of his infidelity right in front of us, it wasn't going to be just a divorce and goodbye. Don't joke! Compensation on top of the inheritance. What a greedy woman you are! Coming from someone who pushed the care of his parents onto his wife and had affairs. Really, the nerve. Don't joke is my line. We have a lawyer here, and plenty of witnesses, so why don't we have a thorough discussion? I just remembered something I have to do. What could be more important than what we're doing now? Don't run away, you fool! Before I could grab his hand, someone else grabbed my husband by the neck. It was Ben's brother, hardened by his construction work. Behind him stood Ben's equally formidable brother. They nodded in agreement. Muscles really do have an impact. After that, under the watchful eyes of the Muscle brothers, other relatives, and Linda, my husband couldn't flee. He had no choice but to stay and discuss until everything was settled. Today's another beautiful day. Looking up, the sky was cloudless and clear. Half a year had passed since then. Thanks to the lawyer, the inheritance proceedings went very smoothly. The divorce was finalized, and I was enjoying living alone. I really wanted to live with Linda, but now that we were strangers due to the divorce, Linda stubbornly refused, not wanting to make me her caregiver again. As a result, Linda moved into a nursing home with the money from selling the house. I visit her once a week. It seems like a wonderful place, and Linda seems happy. In the end, I feel like this was the best outcome. The house was sold. That means, essentially, the house was gone. As for my ex-husband, who was practically kicked out, well, according to the will, he received his share of the inheritance. He was overjoyed at first, but then his face turned pale. Why? Because the inheritance had almost vanished. The reason goes without saying. Compensation, of course. My husband's inheritance was gone. Not enough from the inheritance alone, so he also had to pay from his savings. As a result, my husband ended up penniless. And more than that, it seems his affair became known at his company. Particularly among the female staff, he was given the cold shoulder and became quite isolated, leading to a series of mistakes, it seems. That woman, she's my boss, but didn't defend me properly, he was saying over the phone. And it turns out that this boss was a woman and, astonishingly, the mistress was his boss. Maybe that explains the mysterious salary raise. But as soon as the affair came to light, he was dumped by the mistress, who also faced a demotion due to the affair and other ethics violations. I made sure she paid compensation too. That's only right. It's your fault I kept making mistakes and got fired. He tried to blame it all on me. But that's not my problem, is it? You got used to caring for Ben, so looking after me should be easy for you. He said, but no, that's entirely different. I couldn't respond with anything but laughter. So, I blocked his calls. I don't know what became of my husband after that. And I don't want to know. To forget about that foolish husband, I started working, and it turned out to be refreshing and enjoyable. The world is so much broader than I thought. A sense of excitement for a bright future welled up in me unknowingly. Gazing up at the contrails stretching straight across the blue sky, I squinted my eyes. Living with a sick person? That's too depressing, no way. Just leave that dying Emil alone. Matthew threw those cold words at me when I expressed my desire to live with my mom, who was in the last stage of breast cancer. I wonder if she couldn't eat good food because she was poor. That's so sad. My Emil, who always disliked my mom, seemed almost pleased upon hearing about my mom's illness. I was shocked. Don't they have a heart? Years later, Emil was diagnosed with a terminal cancer as well. Matthew decided we should live with Emil without asking me, so to get back at him, I chose to leave the house. My name is Alicia, I'm 32. I married Matthew, a former colleague from work, 5 years ago. I wanted to keep working, but Matthew wanted me to focus on housekeeping, so I reluctantly became a housewife. We lived just the two of us, but male Samantha, who lived nearby, often came over. Samantha, who was born and raised in a wealthy family, had a different set of values, but we got along reasonably well. The only concern was the bad relationship between my mom, Natalie, and Samantha. My mom grew up in a fatherless household and was forced to live in poverty. Maybe that's why she took good care of things and didn't indulge in luxuries. However, Samantha was extravagant and bragged about being wealthy more than necessary. The pre-wedding family meeting took place in a hotel near the in-laws' house. The meal went smoothly, but when I went to the restroom, I found Samantha and Mom arguing. Where did you buy those clothes? They look so poor. Well, I hate the idea of being related to someone who dresses so strangely. Why is Matthew marrying someone from such a weird family? It's not about appearance. Judging people by such things isn't right. Mom wasn't fazed and countered firmly, which seemed to annoy Samantha, who glared at her fiercely. They met again at the wedding but didn't talk at all, and Mom and Samantha haven't met since. Samantha, who lived alone, a 10-minute walk away, was living off the inheritance from her husband, who was a doctor. Perhaps because she had time on her hands living alone, she often visited our house. Before Matthew went to work, he told me to keep the next Sunday free. Why? I was planning to visit Mom on Sunday. Mom's coming over to visit. Can't you handle it alone? If you're my wife, you should at least offer Mom some coffee. But I want to visit my mom sometimes too. We can do that some other time. It's not too far to my parents' home. Just about a 15-minute drive. But because Samantha came over almost every week, I hadn't seen my mom for nearly 3 months. We kept in touch by phone and text, but I missed seeing her in person from time to time. Since Dad passed away, Mom had been working part-time and could only really relax on Sundays. But with Samantha visiting almost every week, it had been hard to find the time to go home. I was just thinking that this week, I should visit my parents' home and talk to Mom. That's when I got a call from an unknown number on my mobile phone. It's XX Hospital. Your mom collapsed at work and was brought here. I panicked at the sudden news. I rushed out of the house and headed to the hospital, where I found my mom lying down. The doctor invited me into the examination room to talk. Your mom has breast cancer. Breast cancer? Can it be cured? Unfortunately, the cancer has spread. It's unlikely to be completely cured. How sad. I couldn't help but tear up at the doctor's words. I never imagined my mom could have cancer. I still haven't been able to repay her for everything. What am I going to do now? I was filled with anxiety. The treatment will be tough and the chances of a complete recovery are slim. We recommend palliative care to make her as comfortable as possible. The doctor's kind words helped me regain some composure, and I returned to the ward. Mom looked much thinner than the last time I saw her. I couldn't help but think that if I had visited Mom sooner, I might have noticed earlier. But it's too late for regrets. I told Mom I wanted to live with her and take care of her at home. She smiled happily at my decision. So, I decided to discuss it with Matthew as soon as I got home. By the time I finished all the hospital procedures, it was already evening. When I got home, Samantha and Matthew were there. Matthew had asked Samantha to prepare dinner because he knew I'd be home late. "How's Natalie?" "She has breast cancer. It seems pretty bad, and the treatment doesn't look promising," I told Matthew, fighting back tears. Matthew looked as sad as if it was about his own family and comforted me by stroking my back. Grateful for Matthew's kindness, I told him I wanted to live with my mom. But his response was unexpected. "That's a problem. It's depressing to come home to a bedridden sick person. Living with MIL and having to be considerate all the time? Absolutely not. But my time with Mom is running short. It's only right to spend it together." I disagree. "Can you really take care of Natalie and handle all the housework?" "Exactly. We need the housework done properly, and you don't even know anything about caregiving." "I won't neglect the housework, and I'll learn about caregiving. It's not like she's bedridden right away. Just leave dying Natalie alone. It's such a hassle." "Right. It's really silly how desperate you are." They laughed. I could only stare at them in disbelief. Are these people even humans? How can they suggest leaving Mom alone when she is about to pass away? Maybe she couldn't afford nutritious food because she was poor. But at least it's not a contagious disease," Samantha said with a laugh. I glared at her, burning with anger. Then, Samantha looked at me and smirked. "What's with that look? If you don't like it, just leave. Not sure if Natalie, a part-time worker with a meager salary, and you, a housewife with no income, can survive even a week, though." "That's right. I'm supporting you. You should listen to me." I couldn't respond. Matthew paid for all our living expenses. My savings were only from before we got married. There was no way the two of us could live on that. So, I decided to visit my parents' home during the day and take care of Mom. It's only a 15-minute drive, not too far to commute. At first, balancing housework and caregiving was manageable, but gradually, as her illness progressed, Mom's muscles weakened and she could hardly walk. It was harder than I imagined. Still, I studied caregiving methods diligently and tried my best to repay Mom. I took care of her and did the housework without a break, getting more and more tired. Then one day, I saw unfamiliar shoes at my parents' home. When I went to Mom's bedroom, I found her sister, Hannah. "What happened?" "Natalie asked me to come and help Alicia. I'm sorry for the trouble. I'd be okay with staying at a facility, but I thought Alicia might not want that." Indeed, I wanted her to spend as much time as possible at home. Understanding that, Mom had asked Hannah for help. "I'm sorry." "It's okay. I want to help too." From that day, Hannah started coming to the house every other day to help. Having Hannah's help made things much easier. I had more time to rest and felt a little more at ease, but cruelly, the disease kept ravaging Mom's body. She caught a severe cold, developed pneumonia, and was admitted to the hospital. A week after her admission, I got a call from the hospital saying Mom was critical. When I arrived at the hospital, it was just when Mom's heart stopped. As the beeping of the machines echoed, I broke down. The tears didn't stop at the farewell too soon with Mom. I was so emotionally shattered that I could hardly manage my daily life. If it weren't for Hannah, I don't think I could have handled the funeral preparations or the inheritance procedures. Matthew and Samantha didn't offer help until the end, nor did they seem to care. Honestly, I was thinking of divorcing Matthew. But my lack of financial independence was a barrier. So, I started working in caregiving. I thought about saving up quickly to get a divorce, but then something happened that made it impossible. I was pregnant. It was a long-awaited child, and both Matthew and Samantha were overjoyed. For me too, it was a much-desired child. Though it was nice to see Matthew and Samantha happy about it. Being pregnant meant I couldn't continue working. A few months later, my son Sean was born safely. Seeing newborn Sean made me feel I had to protect him no matter what. With few childcare centers accepting infants, and the demands of childcare and housework, I reluctantly resigned from my job. I lost my chance to divorce, and about 5 years passed. I started working in caregiving again when Sean began attending preschool. I worked only while Sean was at preschool, juggling housework and childcare at home. One day, Matthew came home early on his day off with a somber look. It was much earlier than his usual return time. Usually, he'd spend his days off golfing with friends or going to the movies, not returning until the evening. But today, it was only 3 p.m. "Dad, you're home early." Sean greeted him happily, but Matthew didn't respond. "We need to have a serious talk, so Sean, please go to your room." After taking Sean to his room, I sat down on the sofa. "What's wrong? You look upset." "Actually, I got a call from Mom. She has a cancer." "What?" "The same breast cancer as Natalie. And there's no treatment for Mom either." "I see." Thinking of Mom, my heart ached. The shock of her passing still hadn't healed, and my heart was still wounded. But my time to grieve was short. "Mom said she wants to spend time with us. So, we're going to live together." "What?" "She's planning to move in the week after next." "Wait. What's wrong?" "Matthew, you're so against me living with my mom. That was years ago, and that was Alicia's mom. This time it's my mom. It's different." "How is it different?" "I'm absolutely against it." "What are you talking about? Can't you, as a wife, take care of your MIL? You married me. It's only natural to treat my mom the same as your mom." Matthew countered with an argument that made no sense. "I'm sorry, but I won't be taking care of Samantha. Given how you've spent your days off playing around, never bothering with childcare or housework, you're probably just going to dump the caregiving on me, aren't you?" "That's not true." "But Alicia, you work in caregiving, right? So it makes sense for you to do it." "What are you talking about? I'm not going to take care of Samantha without getting paid. How heartless can you be? Look, living together is already decided. I'm renting an electric bed, so make space for it." With that, Matthew left the house. I was left reeling by Matthew's selfishness. I hadn't forgotten the hurtful things Samantha and Matthew said to me when I wanted to live with my mom. I didn't want to take on the burden of caregiving for such unkind people. I was determined to divorce. After that, Matthew was often late coming home, claiming he was busy with hospital visits and arrangements. He often returned after Sean and I had gone to bed. In Matthew's absence, I began preparing for divorce. The one who helped me with the divorce preparations was Hannah. Hannah had been through a divorce herself, so I consulted her about what should be done. She not only shared her own experiences, but also provided useful information I hadn't even thought of. However, one of my biggest concerns was finding a new home. Even renting an apartment was difficult because I couldn't afford places with high rent. I struggled to find a place that was affordable, suitable for Sean and me, and not too far from my workplace. That's when Hannah offered help. "If you're struggling with rent, I can introduce you to a good property. A friend of mine owns an apartment, and I believe one room is vacant. She's willing to rent it cheaply to have it occupied, and it's not too far from your workplace." Grateful for Hannah's offer, I immediately asked her to introduce me to the property. It was conveniently located, not far from Sean's preschool and my workplace, so I signed the contract right away. But there was another thing that worried me. It was about Sean. I felt it was unfair to suddenly drag him into the situation and separate him from his dad. I was considering giving up on the divorce if Sean was against it. However, Sean spoke to me with kind words.
Mom, are you okay? Are you in pain?
No, I'm not in pain.
Just thinking. Would you be sad if you couldn't live with Dad anymore?
I'd be a little sad, but I hate seeing you sad more. I was taken aback by Sean's words and looked into his eyes. Sean continued with a slightly sad face.
Because Mom, you look a little sad when you're with Dad. I prefer it when you smile.
I had heard that children are very observant, but I was surprised to see how much Sean noticed about me. I thought he was still just a child, but he seemed to sense that things weren't going well with Matthew. And still, Sean chose me. With Sean's understanding, I decided to take action. The day came for Samantha to move in. Matthew had left a message saying to make space for the electric bed and other items. He went to the in-laws' house to bring Samantha's belongings. Seizing the moment, I left the divorce papers at the house and took Sean with me to our new apartment. I ignored Matthew's calls as Sean and I sorted through our belongings. The thought of starting a new life filled me with a sense of liberation. Life with just the two of us turned out to be more comfortable than I expected. By cutting costs and living frugally, my salary was sufficient to support us. In fact, I had used my free time after having my child to study caregiving and had obtained a certification, which resulted in a higher salary than before. Since Matthew never contributed to household chores or childcare, the amount of housework I had to do remained the same. Actually, it was easier without having to cook and do laundry for Matthew. However, in the midst of our comfortable life, I unexpectedly ran into Matthew at the supermarket.
Alicia, what are you doing? You left the house without saying anything.
Matthew approached me, shouting amidst the crowd.
Stop it. There are so many people here.
Damn it.
Come home. We'll talk there.
I honestly didn't want to return to that house. To face Samantha again. I didn't want to see her face at all. But to keep my current home a secret, I had no choice but to comply. As soon as I entered the house, Samantha began berating me.
Where have you been, Alicia?
It doesn't matter where.
Of course it does. You should come back and take care of Mom.
No thanks.
Why not just leave dying people alone?
What did you say?
How could you say such a thing? Did you forget already? Isn't that what you told me? Why should I do anything for Samantha when you never lifted a finger?
Matthew and Samantha's faces turned red with anger and breathed heavily.
I don't mind if Matthew wants to care for Samantha. I just want a divorce. Why divorce all of a sudden? You don't even have to do caregiving, just handle the household chores. Are you tired of even that?
No.
It's not the chores I'm tired of. I'm tired of being Matthew's wife. I can't be with someone who cheats on me with a younger woman, saying he's busy with preparations while his mom is sick.
What do you mean?
What are you talking about?
Samantha looked puzzled, and Matthew stuttered in denial. His panic made it seem like an admission, but he still tried to lie his way out.
Actually, when I talked to Hannah about divorcing Matthew because of his tyrannical attitude, she said she saw Matthew entering a young woman's house. So I did a little investigation and sure enough, he's been meeting a woman almost every day. A coworker, maybe? I have the photos.
I had received photos of Matthew's infidelity from the investigation. When I showed them, Matthew's face turned pale. Samantha glared at Matthew.
Matthew, what are you doing when I'm going through such a hard time?
No, it's not like that. I was thinking this would be the last time we meet. Making memories before I start caring for Mom. I won't meet her again.
Even if you don't meet her anymore, the fact that you cheated won't change. If you refuse to divorce, I'm not afraid to go to the court, but you won't stand a chance of winning. So, please sign the divorce papers quickly. And from now on, any discussions about the divorce should go through my lawyer.
Matthew looked frustrated and then,
As if he had an idea, he smirked maliciously. You're working in caregiving now, right? Yes. I bet you're not earning much. With your salary, you must be living a poor life in a cheap apartment. He probably thought he could intimidate me by highlighting my lack of financial resources. But I was no longer the person I used to be. Thankfully, I got a good deal on a cheap apartment and am living a slightly better life. Of course, I need to be frugal, but I'm not struggling so much that Sean has to go without. I won't be controlled by you forever. Controlled? Yes. You wanted to keep me from earning money by dumping all the housework on me, making me think I couldn't live without you. But I can live without you. When I spoke my mind, Matthew's face twisted in frustration. Fine, I'll divorce you. But don't come crying when you run out of money. Life will only get tougher when Sean starts advancing in school. Just wait, you'll suffer. Matthew signed the divorce papers on the spot. I took them and stood up. Thank you. Now we're strangers. Good luck with Samantha's care. Oh, and about the compensation from the divorce trial, my lawyer will handle it. With those words, I left the house. It was half a year later. Not at the supermarket where I had previously met Matthew, but at a different one, I saw Matthew standing at the entrance. And when he saw me, he hurriedly approached.
I'm glad to find you. If you live around here, I thought you'd come here for sure.
What do you want? We're strangers now, so don't talk to me.
Wait. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please come back.
It seemed Matthew didn't know my apartment or workplace and had been waiting for me at local supermarkets, hoping to run into me. And then, Matthew fervently apologized. What now?
I was wrong. Mom can't even go to the toilet by herself anymore, and I can't manage caregiving after work. It's too much. I'm exhausted, making mistakes at work. I can't handle it all on my own.
Matthew was likely struggling with housekeeping. He was wearing a dirty shirt. And his hair was unkempt and unbearable to look at. So you realized how hard caregiving is.
I really felt it. So, can you come back and help?
No.
But why?
It's too late for regrets now. It's all because of what you did, Matthew. Don't come near me again. If you follow me, I'll report it to the police.
Alicia, don't say that. Please.
Make sure you pay the child support and compensation from the divorce trial. Matthew was in tears. The same Matthew who always looked down on me. His pathetic state was just astonishing. The heartless words about my mom, the selfish behavior of constantly playing around without caring for the family, and to top it off, the betrayal of cheating, this was the result. There was no other way to put it but as a consequence of his own actions. Afterward, Matthew apparently pressured his affair partner into marriage, but was, of course, rejected. It seemed she reported him to their superiors, leading to a sexual harassment case, and he was transferred to another department. This news came from former colleagues at the company where we both worked before getting married. Having several acquaintances there, I naturally received updates. Balancing caregiving and work became too much for him, his performance dropped, and with the transfer, his salary significantly decreased. With the reduced income and obligations to pay the child support and compensation from the divorce, he's apparently in a situation where he can't afford a helper or caregiving services. He's desperately trying to provide care, but he's at his limit both mentally and physically, unable to focus at work, making frequent mistakes, and spiraling down. A former colleague mentioned that if the mistakes continue, he might even be fired. It's unfortunate, but it's no longer my concern. I'm living a peaceful life in the apartment Hannah introduced to me. Balancing housework and my job is challenging, but with Sean and Hannah's support, we're managing. It's a pity I couldn't show Sean to Mom, but I like to think she's watching over us as I do my best for Sean's sake. The shining moment of life, that's a wedding. It's the important day when you become the star. That's why you want to make it a memorable and wonderful event. Everyone would think so. Especially for a bride, it's something you absolutely want to succeed. But what if it gets ruined? What if the groom's family is the one who ruins it?
Be grateful we're taking you as our daughter-in-law,
says Ben, my father-in-law.
We'll teach you proper manners. Be thankful,
says Emma, my mother-in-law. My parents' word is law. Obey everything, says my husband. Could you tolerate such a thing? I'm Mary, 25 years old. I work as an office clerk at a small company. I met my boyfriend, Tom, through work. Today, we went to Tom's parents' house. We're getting married, so we came for a family meeting. Tom's parents, whom I'm meeting for the first time. Standing in front of their large house, I swallowed nervously.
Don't be so tense. Relax, they're my parents, says Tom. Yeah. Do I look okay? Will they accept me? Don't worry, you'll be fine,
Tom lightly says and reaches for the front door. Nervously, I enter the house. We're greeted by Tom's mom. A woman with her hair neatly tied back, giving off a calm aura. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary. First impressions are crucial, so I greet her energetically. Then, so you're Tom's. Emma says just that and retreats to the back. I'm taken aback when Tom urges me to come inside. I feel like my efforts are being undermined. In the living room, a man, presumably Tom's father, is already seated on the sofa.
Hello, Dad, Tom says. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary.
I greet him, thinking this must be Ben. Then, behind his glasses, sharp eyes pierce through me. So, you're Tom's girlfriend. Quite plain, but sit down anyway. Again, I'm taken aback by his words. What? Plain? Sure, I dressed modestly today, but to say it to my face. The atmosphere is unpleasant from the start. Is this normal when meeting a son's fiancé? Amidst the awkwardness, I sit on the sofa as prompted. Tom sits next to me. An uncomfortable silence follows. Ben crosses his arms and closes his eyes, while Tom casually plays with his phone. After a while, Emma comes in with coffee. Thank you, I say, but Emma just looks at me without a word. Extremely awkward. Why is it so awkward? Thinking that these will be my in-laws makes me a bit reluctant. But marriage is about patience, right? It's not easy to get along with people from a completely different background all of a sudden. Anyway, I just need to be patient for now. It would be troublesome if they opposed our marriage because they disliked me. I stayed silent, not wanting to stir the waters. So? We've decided to get married. Tom finally spoke up when Ben urged him. Hey. It's an important conversation, and he's casually mentioning it while fiddling with his mobile phone. That's what I thought inside, but I definitely couldn't say that in front of my future in-laws. I sighed inwardly and turned back to them.
I may not be perfect, but please.
Why did you choose such a plain woman?
Excuse me?
I was about to introduce myself when Emma cut me off. And she said something unbelievable. Plain, that's what Ben called me earlier too. Tom is very handsome, as you can see. He deserves a more beautiful woman. How could our son choose someone like you? It's a shock to me as a mother. Do you understand? I'm sorry. How am I supposed to understand that? Should I say he's not that handsome? That would probably end badly. I apologized, suppressing my swirling emotions. Feeling the injustice of why I even had to apologize. But Emma's onslaught didn't stop. First of all, Tom had better marriage proposals. The daughter of a prestigious patisserie, the young lady of a major IT company. All from beautiful families. And you've ruined all those opportunities. How will you take responsibility?
Responsibility?
If there really were such amazing proposals, I'm sorry. But why do I have to apologize for that? Tom, on his part, was no help.
Why isn't he supporting me? Feeling my glaring gaze, Tom hastily looked up from his mobile phone.
Mom, that's enough. I chose Mary because I want her. Don't nitpick.
But you.
Emma, that's enough. You're making Mary uncomfortable.
Still, Ben. Even when her son and husband told her, Emma still seemed to have something to say. Ben stopped her and then looked at me. By the way, what do your parents do? My dad is a salaried worker, but my mother passed away when I was young. My father, not finding anyone he loved more than her, didn't remarry and raised me by himself. When I shared this, they looked surprised. From a single-parent family, I see. Oh, single parent, huh? What's with that tone? Both of them together. The stifling atmosphere didn't change, and that was the end of the day. My unease never cleared up until the end. Tom did say he had no intention of marrying anyone but Mary, but I could feel the mood of almost yielding to his parents' pressure. I'm feeling uneasy. This house, it's full of nothing but labeling, calling everything plain or criticizing for being from a single-parent family. I forgot the uneasiness I felt back then in the midst of the busy wedding preparations. There was just so much to do. Staying within the budget meant not all wishes could be fulfilled. I only had one chance for a dress change, so I spent a lot of time choosing the dress. I was satisfied with the flawless piece I selected. Negotiations with the venue, preparing the invitations, there were so many things to take care of. It was a hectic period at work too. Before I knew it, 3 months had passed, and the wedding day arrived. After the ceremony in the church chapel, I took a moment to breathe in the waiting room, and then my father came in.
Congratulations, Mary.
Thank you, Dad. His eyes were red. The walk down the aisle earlier in the church, my arm linked with his. He cried all the way until we reached Tom, the groom.
Dad, you're crying too much.
Can't help it. My little girl is getting married. I wish your mother in heaven could see this.
I'm sure she's watching from above.
Yes.
It must have been tough for a father to raise a daughter alone. I had my rebellious moments during adolescence. There were things easier to consult with a mother, not so easy with a father. Our relationship strained, and at times, I rebelled fiercely. But now, as an adult, I understand. My father was always there, watching over me. Clumsy, but he truly loved me and took great care of me. Dad, thank you for everything. I'm going to be happy. He cried again. Oops. The moment I smiled, he was overcome with emotion and burst into tears. Then the reception started. The bride and groom's parents sat beside them. Next to me was naturally my father alone. He managed to stop crying, but his nose was still runny. I watched the ceremony proceed with a wry smile, thinking, can't be helped. But one thing was bothering me. My in-laws. Across from Tom, my in-laws were eating and drinking voraciously. In such situations, the bride and groom are the main characters and hardly get to eat anything. You have to listen attentively to speeches from bosses and friends, and you have to smile even at dull performances. Nervous and attentive, there's no time to eat. Even my father only occasionally sipped water and hardly ate. In contrast, my in-laws just kept eating. And drinking. We had arranged for quite expensive wine, but they drank it like water. It was as if they were trying to get their money's worth. With a strained face, I decided to enjoy the reception. But the incident happened right after that. It was during the candle service when we were about to express our gratitude to our parents. First, it was my turn. Me, Tom, and my father stood up. Just as I was about to read the letter I had prepared. What's this, a letter to the parents? To a single parent? What's there to say? He probably didn't even raise you properly. It's true, there's such a thing as the air freezing in a place. I felt the room freeze. Who made that remark just now? I looked around in surprise. It was Ben.
Ben?
As if to interrupt my astonished voice,
Ben raised his tone even further.
Seriously? Sending us a daughter with no manners? How do you plan to support us without a decent income? Excuse me?
What is he talking about? Supporting them? I might understand if it's about Tom's support. But why does my income matter? Confused, I tilted my head, and Ben pointed at me and yelled.
Listen. We're taking you as a daughter-in-law, so be grateful. If you have any gratitude, send us money every month. Excuse me?
Shocked, I remained still, and then Emma spoke up.
Really? Such a plain daughter, we didn't really want her. Even the dress she chose is plain, unbearably plain. Being from a single-parent family, you probably weren't raised properly. It's a good opportunity. You're becoming our daughter-in-law, so we'll teach you manners. Be thankful. Emma?
Apparently, the two were completely drunk, their faces bright red. Perhaps this was their true feelings coming out. I couldn't believe my in-laws could think this way. I was just stunned. In a panic, I looked at Tom.
Your parents are saying such things, but this must be a mistake, right? Support? Manners? They're just drunk, right?
Verbal abuse towards his soon-to-be wife. I expected Tom to get angry, but my expectation was quickly betrayed. What? What are you talking about? My parents are saying it, so as their daughter-in-law, it's natural for you to obey, right?
Excuse me? What's that supposed to mean?
Don't worry, don't worry. If you follow Dad and Mom's instructions, nothing will go wrong. That's how someone outstanding like me was raised. Well, I did choose my marriage partner myself. Mary, you'll be fine. If you listen to my parents, everything will work out. Tom wasn't drunk. He hadn't drunk a drop. Yet, these words.
What are you talking about? Support? Manners? That's ridiculous.
The moment I vehemently objected. Tom's face, twisted in a way I'd never seen before, loomed in front of me. Anger filled his expression.
What? You don't understand? My parents' word is absolute. As their daughter-in-law, you must obey everything. Don't you get it? This is why single parent.
The moment I heard Tom's words, something inside me snapped. I felt cold. It was too much. I'd had enough. In an instant, my love for him vanished. I couldn't understand what I had ever seen in this man. I turned around, feeling completely detached. And my father, seeing my face, nodded subtly.
Shall we go?
He said.
Yes, let's.
My father and I stood up simultaneously and started walking towards the exit.
Wait.
Tom and his parents were stunned.
Hey Mary, what's this joke?
You're the one joking.
Don't touch me.
I reflexively brushed off Tom's hand as he tried to grab me and turned towards the attendees.
I apologize to everyone who took the time to come here today. Today's reception will be canceled here. We will make amends at a later date.
I greeted everyone firmly and solemnly.
What are you doing, making decisions on your own?
Tom was panicking.
Shut up. How can I continue after being ridiculed to this extent?
I had never directed my anger at Tom before. But this time, it had exceeded my limits of patience.
Mary, what are you doing? You're bringing shame upon us. I won't forgive this. I don't need your permission. Don't you understand the atmosphere here? Continuing the reception in such a frozen venue is abnormal.
At my remark, Emma hurriedly looked around. Company colleagues, relatives, friends, many acquaintances. Their gazes were cold. The three of them, subjected to a mix of astonishment and anger. It seemed they finally realized their unreasonable behavior. Emma started.
It was just a little joke,
she said. Too late.
What joke? How can such despicable behavior happen at such an important occasion? That's right, that's right. There's a limit to making fun of someone. Marrying into a family like yours would be pitiful for the bride. You should definitely call it off.
Boos started all at once. The in-laws and Tom turned pale. Then someone stepped forward. It was my father.
Indeed, Mary did go through hardships. Being raised only by me might have had its inconveniences. But I believe she turned out to be a wonderful daughter.
I listened silently to my father's words.
At least, she's not a daughter who should be exploited and disciplined by you. What about you, after all? What's wrong with us? Parents who exploit money from their DIL, a son who doesn't even try to protect his bride. To me, it seems like you're the ones who failed in parenting.
Voices of support rose from all over the venue at my father's words. The three of them, subjected to blame, turned paler. Then I stepped forward. And I said,
Tom, I will not marry you. I'm better off without a family like yours. Don't involve me in your life again.
At these words, Tom finally started crying, and the family of three left the venue as if fleeing. A big round of applause erupted from the venue immediately after. The applause, marking the finale of the cancelled reception, made me smile wryly as I held my father's hand, and he returned the smile. What happened afterward? Of course, the marriage was called off. Fortunately, we hadn't registered the marriage, so there was no record of divorce. Tom, I thought he might come crying and begging, but instead, he became defiant and insisted on reconciling, but of course, I politely declined with a smile. The chaotic scene at the reception quickly spread among the company and beyond, as company colleagues were also invited. He faced judgmental glances and, amidst the discomfort, was transferred to a distant rural sales office. It was essentially a demotion. Right up until he moved away. I'm sorry. You're the only one for me. I'll wait forever. He kept sending messages. I just smiled and blocked his number. Tom's parents became pariahs among their relatives. Somehow the news of their mid-reception exit spread, and they're living quietly, almost hiding in their neighborhood. Please, come and be our DIL to clear up the misunderstanding. They pleaded, but what was that all about? When they became too persistent, I warned them that I might take legal action, and they finally quieted down. Since then, the two followed Tom to the countryside. I hope they never come back. For years have passed since then. In my arms is a small life. After what happened, I thought I wouldn't marry for a while, but life is unpredictable. I met a man through work and am now living a happy married life. Mary, let me hold the baby too, says Dad. David, you just held him, it's my turn now, says Nick. You get to hold him every day, I only get to occasionally, let me have a turn, Dad protests. Both of you, it's time for the baby to sleep. You can hold him again later. I smile wryly at my father and husband vying for the baby. Feeling the baby stir in my arms, I think to myself, may your life be filled with happiness. Just like my father raised me happily. With love, as he loved me. I will protect you. Because I love you. So, may your life be filled with immense happiness.
Is she running late again? As the start time loomed, I mused while gazing at the empty chair. My co-workers also looked frustrated. Eventually, the owner of that seat showed up about an hour after we had opened for business. My name is Casey. I'm a 48-year-old office worker. I live with my husband Scott and our 2 kids. My kids are in high school and middle school, so they're pretty independent now, allowing me to focus on my job. Scott recently started a business with some friends, and while it seems tough, he's happier than before. I've been working in accounting for quite some time at this small to mid-sized company and get along well with the part-time staff. However, I'm having issues with a newer employee named Frances. She's 24, half my age. the daughter of our managing director. She's clearly a product of nepotism. I didn't mind that initially. It's a small company, and these things happen. So when I heard that the managing director's daughter was joining the company, I just thought, oh, that's it. But Frances is a real piece of work. She was assigned to accounting after one of our part-timers left due to personal reasons. I was mostly handling things on my own, and I had heard Frances had some qualifications. So I thought maybe she would lighten my load. Turns out, I was wrong. I'm better off working alone. From our very first meeting, things felt off. When I greeted her, she said,
"Sure, nice to meet you, Aunt."
I was flabbergasted. Not only was her attention divided, but she also had the audacity to call me Aunt upon our first meeting. The managing director just watched it unfold with a smile, not seeming to mind. If my kids behaved like that, I'd tell them, "Don't be rude." Are things just different nowadays? I've never really liked our managing director personally. We only converse when necessary. I never knew he was so indulgent with his daughter. He probably thinks she can do no wrong. Confronting Frances would only upset him, so I held my tongue. Though I sighed inwardly, I have a duty to train her, so I went on to explain her the tasks. But Frances wouldn't listen.
"I can't remember all these things at once,"
she said, giving up even on listening. I restrained my irritation and asked her about her so-called qualifications. I thought you had some kind of certification. What is it? I thought maybe I could assign her work based on that. But her answer was,
"I'm an accounting clerk."
Apparently, she went to a vocational high school and got the certification almost involuntarily. She tried and failed multiple times to become an accounting technician, she told me. Is it really okay to have someone like that in accounting? I had my reservations, but I did my best to train her while focusing on my own work. A month after Frances joined, her attitude hadn't changed, and she still couldn't do her job properly. To be precise, I had taught her the same things repeatedly, but it seemed like she had no intention of remembering, as she didn't even take notes. Other staff members were also complaining that Frances wouldn't do the work they asked of her. What made it even more frustrating was that she was earning the same salary as me, despite my many years of service. Another month passed, and Frances had shown little to no improvement. One day, she didn't show up at the start time. I called her mobile, but it went unanswered. The managing director was out meeting clients and hadn't arrived at the office yet, so everyone was worried. An hour later, Frances finally showed up, acting as if nothing had happened. "What happened? Is everything okay?" I asked.
"Oh, looks like I overslept."
What kind of professional does that? I told her, if you're going to be late, you should at least inform the office. Frances gave a nonchalant,
"Okay,"
in response. Everyone around us sighed in unison. From then on, Frances started being late more frequently. Though she supposedly lived with her family, she spent many nights out, something even the managing director was unaware of. There were times when she would be late even when the managing director was in, but all he would say was, "Oh, you're late today," leaving everyone else dumbfounded. The stress from dealing with Frances kept piling up in various ways, and then the incident happened. Is she late again? Even the managing director didn't know. She had spent another night out. Apparently, she stayed at her lover's place. The start time came and went, and she was nowhere to be found. I called her mobile again, but as expected, no answer. At this point, should we just ignore her? My colleague Dina said, clearly frustrated. Finally, Frances arrived, more than an hour late. She sat down at her desk without a greeting and started putting on makeup as if nothing had happened. Everyone was stunned, but she didn't seem to care. I finally had to say something. Frances, this really isn't okay. She looked at me puzzled. They don't seem to know what's wrong. You come in late, no greeting, and you start doing your makeup? Just then, I saw the managing director returning to his desk. But I continued. I've told you before to call if you're going to be late, remember? It felt ridiculous having to say this to a 24-year-old adult. It was like scolding a child. Frances just sulked, acting, indeed, like a child. The last thing I said was, "Isn't it common courtesy to apologize when you're late?" The managing director stormed over to me, his face twisted in anger. He yelled at me. "You insolent brat! Who do you think you are? You're fired!" I almost blurted out, "What?" but held my tongue. Nervous glances spread through the room. Of course, the president is conveniently absent. Well, the president's not really reliable to begin with. Frustrated with the managing director's tirade, my colleague Dina spoke up. "Wait a minute. Casey hasn't said anything wrong here." Dina works in sales and hates injustices. She has a strong sense of right and wrong. We've been good friends for a long time, and we help each other out at work. Everyone else in the room nodded at Dina's words, but not the managing director. He yelled at Dina. "You're talking back to me? You're fired too!" I couldn't take it anymore and glared at the managing director. "Are you serious about this?" Dina was glaring at him too. He declared both of us fired and told us to leave immediately. At that moment, the president returned, but did nothing but look puzzled. Apparently, the president and the managing director are relatives, and for some reason, the president can't oppose him. Fed up, Dina and I packed up and left. We stopped by a cafe on the way to catch our breath. What's his problem? I was getting tired of the job, but I didn't think I'd have to quit like this, Dina said, still fuming. Indeed, we had started to think about quitting the company ever since Frances arrived. I feel bad that you got fired because of me. That was my biggest concern. Had I not spoken out, Dina wouldn't have been fired. Dina reassured me. It's okay. I was tired of working full-time anyway. Maybe this is a chance to find a part-time job. What about you, Casey? I've actually been offered a part-time accounting position at Scott's company. Dina thought that sounded like a better option. Both the managing director and Frances really ticked me off. Dina was still angry, and I agreed with her. I wonder if the company will be all right without us. Not that it's any of our business. I said that, and Dina finally smiled. Exactly. Even if they beg us to come back, I won't. I feel like suing them for wrongful termination. We decided to take some time to cool off and discuss what to do next. When I got home and told Scott about what happened, he was even angrier than I was. What? What's up with that managing director? I was furious too, and unsure about whether I'd made the right decision. But Scott's reaction confirmed that I wasn't in the wrong. Scott's words were comforting, and I finally felt at ease. I then started working in accounting at Scott's company. The part-time accountants who were already there told me they felt more at ease now, as their workload had lightened. Dina too started working for Scott's company. Though not full-time like before, but part-time. Since we were fired on the spot and had to pack up immediately, we hadn't been able to do the paperwork for leaving the company. Someone, probably my successor Francis, would take care of it. We started working energetically in our new environment. After some time had passed, I received a call from the managing director of my previous company.
"We don't understand the accounting you were handling. Come to the office immediately."
What's he talking about? Could it be they're failing at the monthly payments to clients and sales calculations that I used to handle? Besides, we haven't even received our exit paperwork yet, but we were fired just for being late. Who do they think they're talking to? Needless to say, I declined. No can do. But the managing director was relentless.
"Come right now and we'll rehire you. You haven't found another job yet, have you?"
I sighed. No thanks, I've already switched jobs. I've taught Frances everything about accounting. Not sure if she gets it though. I hung up after saying that. Apparently, Dina also got contacted. There were several clients who said they'd stop doing business if Dina wasn't handling their accounts. The managing director arrogantly offered her re-employment as well. He had underestimated Dina, thinking she was just a female salesperson and wasn't capable of handling work. It turned out she was a valuable employee. This fueled our anger towards the managing director once again. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing, with calls from the previous company reaching over 100 in just a few days. Even when I answered the phone thinking that I had completed the necessary documents for my resignation, I was simply told to come quickly because they would rehire me from above. We had had enough. Frustrated, Dina and I decided to go to the previous company and give them a piece of our minds. Upon seeing us, the managing director said,
You finally came back. You should have returned obediently from the start."
We hadn't returned to the company. We were there to confront him. I said with a smile, "You should have no problems if Frances is handling the accounting, right? I taught her everything. If she can't do it, that's on her. You, as both a parent and a boss, are failing if you haven't even noticed her poor behavior." The managing director's face turned red with anger.
"How dare you? I even offered to rehire you."
I calmly responded, "That's precisely why we don't want to be rehired. In fact, we were considering quitting anyway." He looked utterly shocked.
"What?"
I went on. "Has Frances started acting like a responsible adult yet? While I don't deny nepotism, at least have her work properly. The way she talks, the attitude when she listens, everything about her is unprofessional. Shouldn't you, as her parent, be the one to address these issues? And you fire us just because we pointed that out? It doesn't make sense. To be honest, I couldn't care less about being fired. It was clear things would go south if Frances was the only one left in accounting." The managing director glared at me. "Plus, firing Dina, who's a stellar salesperson, shows you really don't know what you're doing. No wonder you're losing clients. How many have you lost in the last month?" I say with a grin, and the managing director's face turns beet red. "I came here today to talk about our wrongful termination. We need you to provide the necessary documents. Also, I wanted to see firsthand how much trouble you're in without us." Dina chimes in after me. "I've already consulted a lawyer about the wrongful termination. We're willing to consider a settlement if it spares us all the hassle. What will it be?" The managing director bursts out.
"What wrongful termination?"
"I was fired on the spot for bringing up issues with an employee's behavior. This is clearly wrongful termination," I say assertively, locking eyes with the visibly pale president. "President, this is your company, isn't it? Your relationship with the managing director has nothing to do with us. Getting more than 100 phone calls is crazy, don't you think? You fire us, and now you want us back because you're in a jam? Who do you think would even listen to that? The president only manages to look paler, unable to say a word. Mr. President, you've done accounting work before, right? I trust you'll handle the rest. Dina and I decide there's no point in further discussion and turn to leave. We'll leave the rest to our lawyer. With that, we leave the company. After some time, we received a request for a settlement through a lawyer, and we agreed. We were recognized as victims of wrongful termination, and we got our unpaid wages, severance pay, and a settlement amount higher than the market rate. We were pleased. It felt like we had finally had our revenge on the company. Both Dina and I would sometimes get urgent calls from clients while we were out, as we had given them our personal numbers. After we abruptly left, some even called to check up on us. I told them the situation and that we had been wrongfully terminated. Word spread quickly in our tight-knit industry. Most of Dina's clients left once she quit, probably cutting the company's business in half. According to a former colleague, staff kept leaving the company. They were getting complaints from clients, and the president and managing director were overwhelmed trying to keep things running. Frances couldn't manage, so the wife of the former accounting president had to step in. She's a very stern person, and Frances was having a hard time, crying every day. 6 months later, the company apparently went bankrupt. It might be a good thing they lasted half a year. One day I saw someone who looked like the managing director at a supermarket near the station. I couldn't help but stare. There he was, dressed in the supermarket's uniform, getting yelled at by a young man who seemed to be the store manager. Looks like he's working part-time at the supermarket because he couldn't find another job. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of the once haughty managing director getting scolded by someone younger. Our eyes met from a distance, and I gave him a nod, which he, of course, ignored. But I frequent that supermarket, so every time I go, I look for the managing director, who's usually getting yelled at for something. I thought he was competent, but later learned from Dina that he just took credit for his subordinate's work. By the way, when I told Dina about the supermarket, she started going there out of curiosity and became a regular customer. In a way, the managing director is contributing to the supermarket's revenue, so maybe he's competent after all. But he's always getting yelled at. Dina and I continue to work happily at Scott's company. Scott even said he's relieved because our work has increased the company's sales. We're both looking forward to Scott treating us to dinner for our upcoming birthdays.
My husband, Brian, is incredibly ambitious. His transition from a regional branch to the headquarters where I work appears to be fueled by a desire to climb the corporate ladder and become wealthy. This ambition made me wary of him. When we first met, Brian asked me, "Linda, your father is connected to our company, isn't he?" "Yes, I work for the company where my father serves as an executive." I've been viewed differently by people inside and outside the company because I have a relative in a position of power. However, time and time again, I've proven my worth through my skills and performance. In a way, my assertive nature might be suited for this type of environment. Despite my initial suspicion, Brian, being handsome and motivated, was a breath of fresh air compared to the all-talk men at headquarters. Working with Brian was enjoyable, and he was always proactive in his approach. I found myself gradually drawn to him. Brian proposed to me, saying, "Linda, with you, I can give my all in both work and home. I believe we can make a great couple. Will you marry me?" I responded with, "Are you sure? I might get so absorbed in work that I may not be able to cherish you." We both are career-oriented, so we spend less time together at home and go out or travel less than most couples. But we trust each other and enjoy our time together. Therefore, I was happy. However, this spring, it was decided that Brian would be transferred alone to a regional branch. Brian, who enjoyed working at headquarters, was deeply disappointed, and I felt it was unfair, given that we were newlyweds. However, I've heard that this is a crucial assignment that could lead to a promotion, and he should be able to return to the headquarters in about a year. With today's technology, we can video call via computer or smartphone. Given that we spend less time together anyway, we can manage our feelings of loneliness and distance. Besides, if I really miss him, I can always go visit. With this in mind, I saw off my husband with a smile. It's been about 3 months since Brian moved to the regional office. We video call each other once or twice a week to update each other on our lives. As I imagined, the world is convenient now, and if we carefully set aside time for long video calls, we don't feel lonely. It seems like you're having fun there. I like to do things like visiting local attractions. Maybe I should come to visit during the summer vacation? I casually mentioned, to which Brian responded with uncertainty. Yeah, I'd love to see you, but they're working me non-stop. I'm not even sure if I'll get any summer vacation. Oh, I see. Leading a project must be exhausting. Take care. I trust my husband's words, and I am saddened by that. Suddenly, I started to wonder about the interior of the apartment my husband Brian was renting, which was beyond his faith. I thought that maybe he couldn't clean properly because he's so busy. But, looking at the part of the room visible on the screen, it seemed surprisingly tidy. It's impressive how he manages to keep things neat and tidy, despite being so busy. I was about to compliment him on that when I noticed an unfamiliar bag at the edge of the screen and couldn't say anything. The bag was a woman's item. Even someone like me, who was not very up-to-date with trends, could tell at a glance that it was a high-end brand. Hey, what's that bag? I naturally pointed out. Brian took a quick glance over his shoulder and replied a bit flusteredly. Look, it's a wedding anniversary gift. We don't get to see each other much, right? But I wanted to make sure to give you something tangible at least. How is it? It has a beautiful shape, and it comes with a matching coin purse, which will be handy, right? I thought it would suit you. I ordered it online, so I wasn't sure about the condition. That's why I unboxed it. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I guess I messed up. I'm sorry. No, it's fine. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to its arrival. No matter how you think about it, it's suspicious. The excuse seems plausible, but there is a sense of mistrust. But at that time, I couldn't confront him, because I still wanted to believe in Brian. Actually, the bag was indeed sent to me later, so it might have been rude to doubt him. The message card was filled with affectionate comments, and I was sincerely happy. However, despite having all this reassurance, I just couldn't erase the slight sense of distrust. I ended up not even taking the bag out of the box, and it's still in my closet. Several months have passed since then. On a day when I had gotten used to the life without Brian and to communicating via video calls, well, Brian, I should get going. Yeah. It's getting colder, so be careful not to catch a cold, Linda. I was about to say thank you and end the call when the doorbell at my house rang. What's wrong? A courier has arrived. You can hang up the call, Brian. See you later. Saying so, I got up and headed for the entrance. At the time, the thought of quickly receiving the package dominated my mind, so I couldn't even consider that I hadn't hung up the call, or that the screen was left on. When I got the package and went back to my room, my husband's face was still on the computer screen. I guess this is the end of the call. For some reason, Brian seemed to think that his side of the remote connection had been cut off, even though his image was still being displayed on my side. I was about to call out to him when an unbelievable sight appeared on the screen. and I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. There was a bed on the other side of the desk where Brian's computer was, and an unknown woman was sitting on it. Despite being broad daylight, she was in a bathrobe. What's more, I noticed that the exact same bag I'd said was a present for a recent anniversary was lying under the bed. Memories of a suspicion I had almost forgotten began to resurface in my mind. Brian had indeed brought a woman into his apartment, and it wasn't just once or twice. The woman was casually playing with her smartphone on the bed, appearing completely accustomed to being in Brian's room. "Oh, you seem to be having so much fun chatting with your wife," the woman said with a cackle, as if to mock me, who was not present. "That might be true, but she's not here now," Brian replied, grinning without realizing that I was listening. "You're such a jerk. The real jerk is you, leaving your bag out in plain sight. I had to buy the same bag just to camouflage it. It was expensive, you know." "That's your own fault." "It's a shame that a luxury item like that is wasted on her. She has no sense of fashion." As they continued their playful banter, Brian and the woman lay down on the bed. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, so I shut down the computer. If I had to put my feelings into words, I would say I just felt regret. It seemed he had gifted me the bag as an anniversary present, but was it actually given to cover up his infidelity? "Brian, you're really the worst," I muttered, the insult slipping out before I could stop it. It's not something I really wanted to say. And that girl is... I also felt something familiar about the woman he was cheating with. I'm sure she's the daughter of the executive vice president who joined the company this year. The audacity to bring her all the way out to the country for a secret rendezvous? It seems like quite an elaborate affair. But somehow, it makes sense to me. I can't help but chuckle, thinking it's a typical choice for an ambitious man like Brian. After all, I too am the daughter of a high-ranking executive. It's just like Brian to pick a mistress who could prove useful in some way. Now, I can't believe in anything anymore. I thought he loved me, as a person. Just when I got tired of feeling angry, I started feeling like I couldn't forgive him now. So I decided to check the truth, and took action. A few days after that shocking video call, Brian suggested we spend some leisure time together. Perhaps he thought it would look bad if we didn't pretend to be friendly from time to time. I responded with an eager yes to his suggestion. Holding the purse that Brian had given me, I visited the apartment he had rented. "See, I keep it pretty clean, don't I? I'll go get us some iced tea." Watching Brian's back as he headed towards the kitchen, I saw my opportunity and took action. I quietly placed the coin purse that matched my bag inside the cupboard of Brian's computer desk. Unbeknownst to Brian, the coin purse contained a bug. It was a high-end model with excellent battery life, so it should continue to capture sounds for several days. Without any evidence, I wouldn't be able to complain. I assumed Brian would notice it, of course, but his mistress has the same one, too. Would he be able to distinguish who owns which? If he does distinguish them, I'll just have to find another way. If he doesn't, that's a win for me. I'm excited to see what kind of information I can gather. When the battery is about to die, I'll call Brian to confirm. "I seem to have lost the coin purse you gave me. Do you have it over there by any chance?" "Oh, yeah. It was wedged in the drawer of my desk. You're so clumsy." I guess Brian found the coin purse, but didn't open it. I could guess from his casual response. If I ask him to send it back because I need it right away, the coin purse will be back in my hands within a few days. Then, as I nervously played the audio, there it was, clear as day. My husband Brian and the daughter of the executive having an illicit affair, their voices engaged in an intimate conversation. Based on this data, I hired a private investigator and had him look into this. As he dug deeper, it turned out that Brian was involved with many more women, not just the executive's daughter. There were so many, I couldn't even count them all on one hand, and they included daughters of board members and department heads. As for me, I began to uncover aspects of Brian that I never knew before, as I started listening to his colleagues in his department. Apparently, Brian had been struggling with his performance recently and seemed to be quite stressed. Realizing that his efforts alone were no longer sufficient to achieve results, he must have shifted his focus from work to networking. I feel genuinely sorry for him. Failing to perform can be a hard pill to swallow. However, that has nothing to do with him betraying me and having affairs with other women. Moreover, he seems to be plotting to use these women as stepping stones to further his career. It's a despicable behavior, both as a man and as a professional. As I continued to investigate on my own, I felt my feelings for Brian quickly cooling off, and a feeling of vengeance began to sprout within me, for he had wounded my pride. Brian's work assignment away from home ended sooner than expected, before even a year was up. He returned home. To celebrate his return, I invited both of our parents and threw a home party. With a feast delivered to our door, lively music playing, and just family around, the atmosphere of our small party was quite jovial. Wait, the music's vibe has changed. And is that my voice? The speakers synced to the music player started blasting Brian's conversation with the executive's daughter throughout the house. Brian turned pale, confused, and flustered. "What's this, Linda?" I had already explained the situation to my parents. However, Brian's parents were in a state of panic, hearing their son's voice entangled with a woman they didn't recognize, and started to confront him. "Brian, what's the meaning of this?" "Surely you're not cheating on Linda." By playing the audio recordings of Brian's conversations with the other woman, which I obtained with the help of the investigator, Brian finally realized that I knew about his affairs. "Linda, you knew everything, didn't you?" Trembling, Brian turned to me with a question. With a smile, I responded, "Why not consider marrying the CEO's daughter next? That'll land you the CEO position in a snap. Though, considering that I've spread these recordings to all the other women you've been involved with, I'm not sure you'll be able to handle the job, even if you become CEO." At that, Brian clung to me, his face a picture of despair. "You also prefer a successful man on the fast-track promotion, right? It was a necessary step for my career. Please overlook it." "But what about us? Is our marriage also just a step towards your success?" "No, that's not it at all," he quickly replied. "You are special." Despite his words, Brian seemed flustered. When he was at a loss for words, my father stepped in and addressed him. "Brian, did you approach my daughter to take advantage of my position? Tell us the truth." In response to my father's earnest question, Brian confessed. "Initially, it was about getting ahead. Even though other women were merely tools for my advancement, I am truly serious about Linda. I promise I won't cheat again. Please forgive me this time. I want a chance to make it right." It was hard to judge whether he was lying or telling the truth. Yet, after such blatant infidelity, even when he claims that I'm the only special one, I find it hard to trust him. "It's not my place to decide," my father continued. "It's up to Linda. I can't even tell if you really mean what you're saying, but I can tell you this much. I despise you, and I can't accept you as my son-in-law." Even Brian's parents seemed doubtful of their son's honesty. "Brian, we want to believe in you, but we know that you've always had a strong desire to overcome your small-town upbringing and make it big in the city. That's why, even with all the evidence piled up against you, we find it hard to believe that Linda is truly special to you. Frankly, we regret the way we raised you." "Even you guys?" While my father's words certainly had an impact, it seemed that the disbelief of his own parents hurt Brian the most. Regardless of what others said, the decision to trust Brian or not was ultimately up to me. I decided to be honest about my feelings. I cannot trust a man who has repeatedly lied to me, deceived me, and even ridiculed me with another woman. I love my work, and I appreciate professional success. But that's why I always want to achieve success on my own. I would never stoop so low as to use someone else for my gain. But I'm telling you that you're different. Why are you abandoning me? We're married, aren't we? If you really considered us to be married, if you truly cherished me, why would you give me the same handbag that you gave to the woman you're having an affair with? And on our anniversary, of all times. Stop making a fool of me. I don't want to share a family with a lazy man who depends on others to get ahead. I want a divorce. With those words, it seemed Brian had given up. His shoulders drooped, and he began to sniffle out of frustration. Well, he had just lost his most convenient stepping stone for his career, so it served him right. Exhausted, Brian was taken home by his parents. It was unlikely he would ever return to our home. Following through on my words, I divorced Brian. After I exposed Brian's wrongdoings to all the women involved, he was sued, not only by me, but also by all the women he had affairs with. Brian couldn't possibly pay all the settlement money with the money he had. He was forced to sell all his properties and even had to take on debt. Brian will probably lose his freedom for a while, paying back his debt. He voluntarily resigned from his company, but in reality, he was practically fired. Once the rumor of his actions reached the higher-ups, it was inevitable they would be furious. With rumors spreading around the office, he probably felt uncomfortable as well. Currently, he's working in a small factory he managed to find employment at, diligently paying back his debt. His parents told me about his situation when they came to apologize. As for me, I have no intentions of ever meeting him again. Of course, I received the alimony from Brian. As for the handbag, which was the same as his mistress's, I was surprised when I sold it for almost the same price as the new one, because it was barely used. It felt like a little bonus. After separating from Brian, I began to contemplate what marriage really meant, and what's important in life. What's most important to me might still be my work, just like before. However, it's not like I don't have dreams of having a family. I might use the money from selling the bag to pamper myself a bit, preparing for a new romance, as I had to work today. I recently returned to my parents' house for work. When I got there, I found the home Wi-Fi was wide open and leaking data. This is unacceptable, I thought, so I fixed it for them. The next day around lunchtime, someone started repeatedly buzzing my family's intercom. Curious, I answered, only to find a woman I had never seen before. Upon hearing Liam's mother's story, she complained. I used to be able to play on my PSP here, but now I can't, and my 5-year-old child is struggling. I wondered if she even understood what she was saying. Annoyed, I responded to everything she said with, "Oh, is that so?" Then she snapped, "I will have my husband formally protest later," and left. I wanted to protest myself, but held back, looking forward to her official complaint. But it never came that day. The next day, having forgotten the incident, the formal complaint arrived. When I was waiting yesterday, I joked. "We are busy, unlike you," she retorted. Then I heard the formal complaint. It was about how inconvenient it had become since they had to go further away because of what I'd done to the Wi-Fi. "What are you thinking about the cost of gas?" Of course, I wasn't thinking anything about it. "Aren't you terrified that small children might wander off alone? Apologize and reconnect the Wi-Fi now." She really said that. "You're part of the boomerang generation. How embarrassing." How rude. I'm on a transfer. If it's a son-in-law you want, he'll be here next year. My husband graduated from college and holds a proper corporate position. That's what sets us apart, she declared. Her husband, Mr. Position, just crossed his arms and glared. I didn't want to let them in, so I guarded the entrance, only to be scolded. Normally, you would apologize, invite them in, and offer coffee and something from the boomerang generation. That's common sense. When I asked the husband, "What do you really think?" he said, "My wife's words are quite unreasonable." When I told them it was unauthorized access, they retorted, "What about the TV? You're accessing that freely, aren't you? Is that illegal?" Ha ha! I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for them. Well, whatever they might say, I told them that I'd had the phone company make it so their calls couldn't get through anymore. I lied to get them to leave. I didn't ask for a boomerang generation, so when I handed them some salty crackers, saying, "Sorry, you must have been hungry," they threw them on the ground. They told everyone they'd come back, so I'm thinking of buying some potato chips and waiting for them. And after that, the Position couple evolved in just one day. They stormed into our house at dinner time, carrying their 5-year-old and an infant. They said they were here to offer a heartfelt apology for yesterday's formal protest, and to pay $10,000 in damages. I told them that I would not be connecting with them anymore and that there was nothing I needed to apologize for, so please leave. But they wouldn't budge. To top it off, the wife bent over with the infant in her arms, covering her face with her hand, tears streaming down, glaring at me. The husband said, "Doesn't your heart ache seeing my wife's brave appearance? How terrifying you are! Now I understand the meaning of being single." No matter what I said, they somehow only related it to marriage, so I thought of saying I'd get married next year, but thought better of it. When I asked them about their threats to bring everyone, their son said, "If you're not going to connect, then forget it." Normally that would be it, but I can't figure out why they're so fixated on this. With no other option, I called the nearby police station, not 911, but they wouldn't deal with it. Since there's no visible damage and it's a neighbor dispute, they told me to solve it ourselves. But since they were trespassing, a patrol car came without a sound. Then the wife powered up even more. As soon as she saw the police officer, she cried out, "This woman is terrible! She's bullying us!" The husband also spoke in a highly theatrical and strange tone. "If I hit her, I'll be the bad one, but I can't bear it." My parents and I were stunned, shaking our heads in disbelief. The police officer who answered the phone came over and kindly explained, "What your child did isn't against the law, but it's a matter of morals. It's your job as parents to teach them that it's shameful." But they were unfazed. "This woman is lying. Look into my eyes. You see what I mean, right?" one of them said, clinging to the police officer. Their movements were disgusting, and they even glanced at us. The police officer calmly asked, "Why would she do that? What's the benefit in her doing something like that?" He continued kindly, "It's late, and this isn't good for your children. Let's go home. If you still want to talk, we have a space at the station where we can discuss this. Shall we?" He was gentle through it all, even as he pried the clinging wife off of him and smiled. He then quickly loaded the family into the patrol car and left. Our jaws dropped, and a neighbor who had come out to see the commotion said, "When they get home and the police come back, make sure you're not looking foolish." We hurriedly prepared coffee and waited. In about 20 minutes, the patrol car returned, and the officer apologized. "I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't know it was like that. Please, tell me the details." We told him everything that had happened. Then he told us something distressing. Recently, there have been many incidents of people attacking their neighbors for no apparent reason. They even demand apologies and compensation, even if they are wrong. Fortunately, the problem seems to be dying out naturally, but there's still a high risk of it persisting. He told us that all they could do was increase patrols, but they were always ready to respond and the station was nearby. The neighbor might forget and spread the word tomorrow. "We got caught up in some strange trouble. Just keep your spirits up." We were encouraged. We felt we could rely on the police more than we thought, so we decided to buy a fence lock and something that turns on a light when someone stands near it. It was my fault for not taking it seriously, but if Father had set it up properly... "I'm sorry, my daughter." He seemed truly sorry. I also told Mother not to go out alone and decided to give her a cell phone in case something happened. Later, Father went to the police to get information on crime prevention. The entrance had a fence but no lock, so we replaced it. We were going to add a light that comes on when someone passes by and a camera, But the police advised against it, saying it might provoke them. It seems that people with this mindset are better off acting as if nothing has happened. They take it as an attack on themselves. I didn't understand at all. So we decided to continue using the intercom camera. We also prepared for an attack by buying an IC recorder and a cheap movie camera. We also decided to replace our old phone with a model that displays the number and includes a fax. The entire family purchased personal alarms. However, since Mother bought them, the very cute designs are a bit embarrassing. Mother also bought a cell phone and had the shop assistant set it all up. Our neighbor investigated the reputation of the family. There's an apartment complex nearby, and they found out they live in one of the nicer units there. They even took notes on their names. Because it's dangerous, I warned our neighbor, and it turns out the family was somewhat known in the area, so I could easily find information about them. The child has a good reputation, but apparently he doesn't go to preschool or a childcare center. It's not that they missed the deadline, they just gave some nonsensical reason, saying it's for the child's sake. I felt a bit sorry for the kid. He must be another victim of that couple. Ever since that incident, I sometimes feel so restless that I want to scream out loud. My husband is still working, so when he's at work, I'm incredibly anxious because I'm left alone with the child. I keep checking up on things via phone or email. I tell myself it's okay since the neighbors and a female police officer are keeping an eye out, but I still feel uneasy. I came back on a plane, but I feel as if I'm in a world just parallel to where I'm meant to be. My son-in-law is still working abroad, so I can't talk to him. I wonder if anyone would believe me if I told them. Just the other day, I got a confirmation call from the pizza place. They said, "A large order has arrived for you." I can't be sure, but it's in my phone book, and I can't think of anyone else but that couple. Since then, we've been able to spend each day safely without any major damage until the parents of the children who were connected to the PSP came over on Sunday. All the children were between 3rd and 5th grade, and only that child, Liam, was 5 years old. They had connected by chance and had been coming over from time to time. Liam, who was following the elementary school children, wanted to join in and seemed to be checking every day to see if he could connect. I heard that they didn't always connect, so they thought they were just lucky when they did. But Liam was diligently checking and reporting. When they couldn't connect anymore, Liam quickly gave up, but when Liam's mother found out, she came storming over. On the contrary, I ended up apologizing to the other children's parents, and I felt terrible. Though they did nothing wrong, it was our home setup that was at fault. I heard from the parents who came over that Liam's family had moved here about 2 years ago, and they immediately noticed something off about their behavior. They didn't send Liam to preschool, and when asked why, they answered with a straight face, "My son is special. If he goes to preschool, he'll become a genius, and others will be jealous. It would be a problem if they harm him." The mother who heard this was scared. Yet they usually let him roam free. Liam's mother says that freedom is essential. Of course, Liam is not special. He's just a 5-year-old who wants friends. But without going to preschool or childcare centers, he can't meet children his age. So he tries to mix with the older children, but it's in vain. The neighbors are saying that he should attend school, but they won't listen. Instead, they react with, "You're just jealous and hate my son," and end up isolating themselves. Since a younger sibling was born in the spring, the neglect has worsened, and Liam wanders outside all day, with a concerned neighbor taking care of him. But they say he's a good boy. He doesn't complain, says thank you when given lunch, and even helps out. It doesn't even seem like he's trying to be liked. Rumors are that before moving here, his mother was sane, or perhaps his grandparents were around. A little off topic, but the PSP that Liam was given to him by a child from the family that feeds him lunch? Hearing that story, I felt so sad that I couldn't. I thought Liam was the main victim after hearing various stories. He said, "Lately, Mom's just been quiet and I feel lonely," and expressed concern like a caring and gentle child, wondering if something was wrong with her. It seems Liam's father doesn't have a stable job. What kind of position is that? I got a bit angry. Liam's parents were notorious for their aggressive behavior, like parking their car in someone else's space without permission, or stealing milk, and picking unnecessary fights. Since there have been a few run-ins with the police, it seems the police's attitude changed when they found out I had reported Liam's family. I also mentioned the pizzeria incident, but as it was prevented, they said they couldn't warn them. I wasn't told whether the phone number was displayed, but it seems they are questioning the pizza place. According to the parents who came today, it's a common tactic to order delivery, so many shops in this area apparently double-check the orders. Today, a male police officer in uniform was patrolling by bicycle, I heard. I'm increasing the security level around my house. Most people now know about the commotion last week, so neighborhood patrols have started. When the parents went to apologize, they were told, "Don't worry, we're patrolling through the neighborhood watch program anyway." And it seems there was a bit of a stir when people realized such a program was in place. There were a few silent phone calls at home today. Of course, I've consulted the police, but since it's only been a few times, I can't file a report. I didn't know A's family's number, and above all, it was hidden, so I couldn't do anything. It seems like only those close to us didn't know, and I was surprised. Liam's parents are clinging to other families too, and I got to meet a wife from one of the targeted households. The reason for the clinging seems to be the husband's high education and their college-age son. They were forced to tutor Liam, and unbelievably were asked for the husband's seed. The police were consulted for stalking, and Liam's mother was warned. They quieted down after that, but someone mentioned my education, and the parents attacked again. I graduated from a certain science university and later from a university in another country. Then I was able to return to my alma mater as a researcher and came back to my country. My husband-to-be is a foreigner, and the paperwork is quite cumbersome, so it's progressing slowly. Liam's mother, learning this, attacked our home. "Why didn't you tell us about such a background when we met? My husband is a Westerner. What a wonderful timing!" That's what she really said. "It's better for the world if you two serve us as a couple instead of getting married. You create a family, and I'll bear even better children with a Westerner." Here, Liam's mother said something terrible, implying Liam was a failure, even though he was there. He's interested in games and TV and looks awful, wants to play with worldly children, wants to hit things. She kept saying things that made it hard for me to stay calm. The spouse swap is temporary and will return to normal life once we have a gifted child, and we'll take both children. In exchange, we'll give you Liam and his little brother. It was so shocking, I felt like my eyes were about to pop out and my jaw was about to drop. I was nearly losing my hair. The newly delivered car was apparently necessary for raising the children, so they insisted that the title be transferred to my name. All the while we were talking, Liam's father kept grinning at me, making me feel sick. In the midst of this, Liam's mother became frenzied, shouting that she would take the house and everyone should leave. She told me she would let us have children and slapped me, yelling, "Don't you dare make eyes at my husband!" She then threw Liam's little brother, who had been on her back, onto the front porch, making him cry from the shock and pain. I watched Liam console him desperately while my own mother began to cry. My father, unable to comprehend the madness, shouted for them to leave, becoming panic-stricken. In the midst of this, Liam's mother became frenzied again, shouting the same things and slapping me again. A police officer arrived due to the commotion, and when told that we would need to continue this at the station, Liam's mother started screaming and crying, claiming, "We're going to be killed by these people!" But her pleas were ignored, and she was forcibly taken to the police car. We also wanted to talk in detail and said that we wanted to press charges, so we were allowed to go to the nearby police station. Inside the police station, Liam's mother continued to eagerly tell her story, and Liam's father oddly seemed to agree, saying it was for the future of Japan. The police seemed to agree that this couple was beyond help. The children were temporarily taken to Child Protective Services, and we were informed they would probably be sent to a facility. Knowing that the siblings would be separated brought tears to my eyes, and I felt heartbroken. I couldn't help but regret how this all could have been avoided if I had only reset the Wi-Fi, and I wouldn't have subjected these children to such a horrible experience. That day we gave our statements and returned home, unable to actually file a complaint. The next day, both my father and I took off work to go to the police station. My mother was bedridden from worry for the children, so a neighbor came to watch over her. At the police station, we were informed that the children were eating and sleeping well and appeared healthy, and also that the parents are being seen by a doctor, so it seems that pressing charges will be dropped. We were grimly considering our options, but were sternly told that moving the children back to their parents or sending the couple away wouldn't lead to happiness for the children. It would be appropriate to say what the couple did was not just child abandonment, but akin to child murder. Their abnormal obsession with us also indicated that they should no longer participate in social life. We were reprimanded when told that the couple would also be placed in a facility, and suddenly showed sympathy. At the same time, we were told that feeling sorry for them wasn't quite right, but neither my father nor I could agree or understand. Of course, we were furious. We had endured strange proposals, being hit, stepped on, and harshly ridiculed about our appearance. However, the fact that we couldn't legally tell them how we felt was frustrating. On the way home, my father suggested moving, and I agreed. Our house was old but sat on a considerable piece of land, so we decided to sell it and look for a place closer to my workplace. My son-in-law has come over now, and he's angry at the situation that doesn't make sense to him in any country. But he's feeling down, thinking there's nothing he can do if he's mentally worn out. However, he seems to understand that it's good for the children, and he was saying that they'll surely encounter a better environment, and that it was fortunate that this happened before they started school. The neighbors also seemed to have mixed feelings, going around and apologizing for what happened so soon after the New Year's celebrations. Everyone was uniformly sympathetic, saying how difficult it was. It's sad to move and say goodbye to our next-door neighbors, but since we were so close to them and spent a lot of time together, they told us they might move because it's becoming uncomfortable. Our next-door neighbor's daughter is getting married, so they seem to have thought that this is an opportunity. While everything is not over yet, I think I'll face forward and do my best. In just over a month, my hair has turned completely white. Maybe I'll take this opportunity to try dyeing it a bright color.